Hi there, just checking with the folks who are just signed on as Alberta Northern Central Alliance. Just checking who it is that's presenting. Oh, okay. That's up to you. I just need a name. Hi, Carolyn. I have you down for 2, but you are the first one here on the list. So you're number 2, but the number 1 person hasn't arrived yet. So.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the afternoon session of our fourth day of public hearings for the Alberta Electoral Boundary Commission. The commission members, if you have video, you'll see us and our names below us, and our biographies are on the website, and I won't bother introducing everyone. So you can check that information out on the website. Our commission was established to take care of two issues relative to the members of the Legislative Assembly. The first issue was to deal with the legislation expanding the legislature from 87 seats or electoral divisions or ridings to 89. The government passed a law expanding it to 89 for the next provincial election, and we were tasked with dealing with those two, providing for those two new seats. And of course, as everyone knows, voters in the electoral division actually elect the MLA for that electoral division. The second aspect of that we were tasked to deal with was the increased population that Alberta has faced over the last decade. Just to give you a sense of proportion, the population of Alberta, when the previous Electoral Boundaries Commission reported in 2017, the population was just slightly over 4 million people. Since that time, Alberta has increased by in excess of 800,000 people. So when we look at what the previous boundaries were based upon in terms of population, you can see from the slide that just over 4 million people divided by 87 electoral divisions resulted in an average population per electoral division of 46,697. Now, that's the average. That's not the target, it's the average. The target population is a range for effective representation purposes, and it's a range of minus 25 to plus 25 of the average. That means the range was 35,000 to 58,000 in 2017. Fast forward to our commission, we have got a population of in excess of 4.8 million divided by 89 electoral divisions, reveals an average population per electoral division of 54,929, or almost 55,000. Again, that's the average. That's not our necessary target. The target zone or target population zone per electoral division is anywhere 25% below that average to 25% above. And the numbers are noted for you on the screen. Just over 41,000 population per riding to almost 69,000. That is the range that we must meet for each electoral division, subject to legislative exception, to meet the goal of what we call effective representation. Sometimes we receive submissions dealing with the concept of one person, one vote. That is not a Canadian principle. That is not a a Canadian target. Rather, our target is the concept of effective representation. One person, one vote is very much an American concept. Now, that doesn't mean population isn't important. It is a factor. It can be construed as one of the primary factors, but it is only one factor in determining the concept of effective representation. No provincial jurisdiction or federal jurisdiction in Canada's history has ever had the concept of one person, one vote. Rather, we have the concept of effective representation. And I'll talk about how we reach that goal in a few minutes. This commission was established in early April of this past year, and the work that we have done since that time is outlined in the slide. First of all, we looked at the population figures, and we came to a conclusion as to what the proper population base should be. So what we did, the legislation requires us to take into consideration the last decennial census, which for Canada was 2021. So we took that figure, and that figure is then updated by the province through its Office of Information and Statistics at the Treasury Board, and that updated work by OIS of the Treasury Board gave us the population figure that we could be quite certain of, as certain as you can be in terms of statistics, that as of July 2024, the population was 4.88 million people in Alberta. Now, you may have heard people say it's pushing up to 5. While we don't have the official statistics on that, we rely on the most recent data that is available to us. So we agreed on the population base for our calculation. And throughout the early part of our commission, we received hundreds of submissions, written submissions as to how we should go about our work, where we should consider reallocating boundaries, and suggestions for the 2 new electoral divisions. In addition, throughout late May and all of June, we as a commission traveled throughout the province. We were in places from Peace River down to Medicine Hat, and from Fort McMurray to Lethbridge and Pincher Creek, and back and forth, zigzagging across the province. And of course, we spent several days in each Calgary and Edmonton. So we heard a lot from the public in terms of how we should go about drafting our interim map. After our public hearings, we then spent considerable amount of time with the map people at Elections Alberta, and they assisted us in drawing the maps and making sure that the appropriate population was within each proposed electoral division. After that, in late October, we prepared and tabled our interim report. That interim report was submitted to the Speaker of the Legislature and provided to each member of the legislature, and then we were open to public feedback. In designing our report, we went through all the requirements that are outlined in the legislation in order to come up with our conclusion or our suggestions in terms of effective representation of all 89 boundaries. And we sought to make sure that the boundaries were understandable and clear for the public. And you will have no doubt, if you're presenting today, you will have no doubt reviewed our interim report, and you can make an assessment as to how well we did our job there. When that report was released to the Speaker of the Legislature and became public, we then opened a portal for public submissions in response to our report. And we received many of them. From early November to December 19th, we received in excess of 1,100 written submissions in response to our written report. We are now at the stage of hearing from the public directly comments, suggestions, criticisms, commendations for our interim report. This week is the first week of public hearings. We spent 2.5 days in Calgary receiving in-person presentations. Today and tomorrow we are conducting hearings online, which makes it accessible for people outside the major cities to participate. We're not traveling outside of Calgary and Edmonton because of the winter season. And then early next week we hear directly from people in Edmonton in terms of our report. There is certain factors that were considered in this report. One of them is hybrid ridings, and we are interested in hearing from presenters on in relation to any specific hybrid ridings that we've suggested. And it's important to remember that in the electoral boundary business, what happened up until the release of our October 27th report was the regular season. We're now in the playoffs, and that means these 2 weeks of public hearings will result in giving us input so that we can prepare the final report, and that final report is due on March 27th of this year. We will present that to the speaker at that time, and our task will be completed. It'll be up to the legislature to deal with our report, to either adopt it, make some slight changes, tinkering, or whatever the legislature wishes to do, but we will have fulfilled our legislative mandate by the time we submit our final report. So with that background and context, I'm pleased to open the second half day of the virtual hearings and hear from those people who have signed up and asked to present. And the first person I have lined up, and I'm not sure that person is in the room yet, Tiffany Bolesky? No? Okay, well, I did hear that there was someone by the name of Carolyn Kolobaba present, and if she is present, we're happy to have her move up in terms of priority and speak first if she's available.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Please identify yourself. Tell us where you live and what particular electoral divisions you're wanting to comment on.
So I live in the Peace Electoral Division. My home residence is in northern Sunrise County, just east of Peace River.
Okay, please proceed.
Our geographic rural region is under threat by a population formula set up in favor of urban areas where the populations are in close proximity to their MLA, whereas the formula, even with the 25% deviation, is calculated to also support urban populations. So 80% of this province has been reduced, or non-representation in provincial or federal ridings will occur. Our airport has no scheduled flights any longer out of the Peace River. The chartered planes for MLAs are almost unheard of. In some of this riding already, today has the First Nations have problems with their road access, and to some communities. We cannot go across the province above the 55th parallel east and west. The MLA in our area from the capital region is 8 hours to 9 hours before he even gets home. We do not take, we ask that you do not take any more rurals or enlarge northern ridings, or we will have no representation at all. Our recommendation, if you need two more MLAs in Edmonton and Calgary, then add them. But leave our region the way it is and do not change it, because representation right now will become unattainable for us. So I leave it at that. I just regurgitate what I told you probably in the last go around earlier. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. I just got to tease out a little bit something you said about 8 to 9 hours. Sorry, refresh my memory. Your MLA resides in Lacrete, is that correct?
Lacrete, yeah.
Okay, and does it take that long to get there from Edmonton?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, he's 5 hours. Well, it'd be 5 hours to Peace River, and then he's another three after that, or depending on the weather, it could be 9. Yep.
And it's your understanding he drives he goes by vehicle every trip to Edmonton. He does not and is unable to fly. Is that fair?
Well, they have passed legislation or regulations that they are not to use any planes whatsoever. So chartering a plane, he did charter once to get into a First Nation hamlet because that's the only way he could get in there. We don't have that service out of here anymore, and so yeah, he travels. So if we want to see him, then we have to go to his office, and I just don't think that that's fair. When Mill Woods is on a quarter section of land, there's 86,000 or so people living on that quarter of land, where for us, I mean, it's 800 kilometers or whatever distance that we would have to cover. And I just think that that's extreme. And if the North has to be exempted to some of these formulas. The formula has to change because 25% is not solving our geographic problem. All it is taking care of a population that, majority of the population could see their MLA in his office within, an hour's drive. Well, that's not the case for 60% of this province in Alberta.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to provide an opportunity for the commission members to ask you any questions, ma'am, if you don't mind. So, Mr. Evans, anything you wish to discuss with this witness or presenter?
Well, the witness, I would have lots of things to talk about. But as a presenter, thank you very much for your submissions, both before and today, and for participating in this. It's been helpful. Thank you.
Ms. Sampson?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn, for being here today. And I did read your submission from previous. I want you to know you should be proud of your MLA. We saw MLA Williams in Calgary, and he did share with us that he recognizes the challenges and difficulties of the North, as you have outlined today, but also he said he knew that that was the job and he's up for it, and he sounds like he really likes it. So you've got yourself a great MLA up there. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. Thank you very much. But again, the trading patterns are the ones that exist today. So please don't change it.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Martin, any questions?
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to comment on something you raised, which we haven't heard before, but I think you're absolutely right. And that is the formula, as you called it, for deriving the average or mean population is, of course, heavily skewed to those inevitably urban areas that have had huge population spikes, thereby driving the mean average higher, which makes life tough if you're in northern and sparsely settled areas. I completely agree, and I'm alive to it, and it's just as well that the legislation forces us to look at a whole range of factors, population being paramount among them, but certainly not the only one of relevance. So transportation and logistical issues, geography, transportation, roads even. It doesn't actually say ice roads, but in your case, I mean, these things are significant parts of daily life, and we are obliged to take them seriously as we weigh up our boundaries. And so, again, I'm very glad that you have mentioned this, the rather unfortunate effect of this population formula, but rest assured that we're fully attentive to how we best weigh all the other factors that the Act obliges us to be respectful of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Kolobaba. I appreciate your contributions more than not only this presentation, but your written work. And please remain in to hear presentations from other citizens as well. And our next presenter, is Tiffany Bileski? Okay. Ms. Bileski, are you ready and able to present at this point?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Tiffany Boleski, and I'm here today as a resident of Joussard. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I recognize the responsibility your Commission carries in balancing population changes while ensuring fair and effective representation across Alberta. My concern is that the interim proposal would weaken effective representation in my area by separating communities that function as one connected region. I live in Joussard, and to give a quick picture of where that is, we are a small hamlet on Highway 2, located between High Prairie and Slave Lake, along the shores of Lesser Slave Lake. That location matters because it explains exactly how our region functions day to day. I'm a teacher in High Prairie, and that is where I spend my weekdays and where many families in our region are connected through work and school. Slave Lake is where I do most of my shopping, errands, and medical appointments. That pattern is extremely common in this region. Many people who live in High Prairie work in Slave Lake, and many people who live in Slave Lake work in High Prairie. These communities are tied together by everyday life, not just geography. Under the proposed changes, those connections would be split in a way that does not reflect how our region actually operates. If I drive from High Prairie to Slave Lake, I would be traveling through 3 electoral boundaries to do what is for many of us a routine trip for work, shopping, or medical appointments. On paper, that might look minor, but in practice, it shows the boundaries don't follow how people actually live and travel here. This matters because effective representation depends on practical realities, whether an MLA can understand and advocate for a region's shared needs, and whether residents can realistically access their MLA. When one connected region is split across 3 electoral boundaries, the issues that affect all of us, healthcare, roads, schools, emergency planning, become harder to advocate for in a coordinated way. Even simple concerns can turn into not my riding problems where responsibility is divided across offices instead of addressed as a shared regional issue. I also want to speak directly about what this proposal likely means for Joussard. The new boundaries may place our community into proposed Mackenzie riding. If that happens, our MLA would most likely be based in High Level, and our closest MLA office would be up to 5 hours away. A 5-hour distance matters. An MLA who lives and works that far from Joussard cannot reasonably provide the same level of attention, connection, or local understanding that we currently have within the Lesser Slave Lake region. Rural Albertans expect to travel, but representation still needs to be reachable. That distance makes it more difficult for residents to meet their MLA, attend community meetings, or raise urgent concerns in a timely way. It also makes it harder for an MLA to regularly be present in smaller communities like ours, especially in a riding that is extremely large and remote. And that brings me to another key concern. The proposed Mackenzie riding is so large that communities like Joussard could easily be overshadowed by larger northern centers with different needs and priorities. Concerns that matter deeply here, rural healthcare access, wildfire mitigation, support for economic development, and highway maintenance could be competing for attention across a vast area. Even with hardworking MLA, time travel become limits, and smaller edge communities can be unintentionally deprioritized. At the same time, our stronger ties are not north. Our community has strong practical ties to Slave Lake and High Prairie, yet under the proposed boundaries, neither of these communities would be in our electoral division, even though they are the ones we rely on the most. Our current placement within the Lesser Slave riding reflects how our region functions, and it works well for us. I also want to emphasize the role of the lake region itself. Communities around the same lake should share the same MLA. The Lesser Slave Lake area is connected through the lake basin, the regional highway system, shared school systems, Indigenous partnerships, and economic networks that cross multiple boundaries. These connections are real and they're strong. Moving Joussard north into Mackenzie would weaken those connections and split a region that already operates as a unit. So my request to the Commission is specific. Please revise the proposed boundaries so that Joussard remains aligned with the Lesser Slave Lake region, and so that the communities that rely on one another, Joussard, High Prairie, and Slave Lake, are not divided in a way that fragments representation and complicates everyday advocacy. Keeping the lake communities together under one MLA would better reflect how this region actually lives, works, travels, and responds to challenges. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to the lived reality of rural Albertans as you finalize these boundaries.
Thank you, Ms. Boleski. Dr. Martin, any questions or?
Yes, I'm very sympathetic to the issues of the north around transportation and you know, the huge footprint. No matter how you slice and dice it, the size of the land remains the same. It's huge. I was particularly taken by your remarks about what you call the lake communities, which is not a concept that we've heard at the Commission before, but it seems entirely reasonable that all the communities around the lake would have lots of linkages, social, economic, cultural, and the like. And, you know, from the high prairie and right through to the town of Slave Lake, I mean, is a very, very strong corridor for people in this region. Is that the thrust of your remark on that point?
Yeah, like we, you know, there's companies that have their base in High Prairie and Slave Lake. You know, we have industries, the logging industry, those kind of things that, and I, as a First Nations person, I am Métis. You know, we connect with, we have lots of Indigenous land here that is something that we, I hope is taken into consideration. Sorry, did I answer? I'm a little nervous.
No, well, don't be nervous, but I'm sometimes a little circular in my questions, but I'm just interested in the dynamic relationships between one end of the lake and the other, and I think you've answered it reasonably well, but it really just hadn't occurred to me before that that is a significant factor in this area. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Ms. Sampson?
Thank you, and thank you for coming out today and speaking with us. I want you to know, if you missed our earlier remarks, we had over 1,100 submissions, and a lot. I wouldn't say you were number one, but you were darn close to being number one with concerns raised about the changes we made in the north. I want you to rest assured that we're having a good hard look at it, and thank you again for the points you brought up today.
Mr. Evans?
Thank you.
Yeah, so you were speaking very fast, and my wife accuses me of being, you know, hard of hearing, but I thought it was only as it related to her, but it might expand beyond that. She might have there might be some merit there. You teach where?
I teach in High Prairie, which is about 25 to 30 minutes away from Joussard.
And then you also go to Slave Lake, and that's how far from Joussard?
45 minutes.
Okay.
So that's where, like, you know, like tomorrow I have a medical appointment I'm probably in Slave Lake and High Prairie once a week, which is, you know, a lot of teachers from Joussard teach either in Slave Lake or High Prairie. We're kind of, if you look at the boundaries proposed, we're kind of, you know, this little chunk of Highway 2 that it just doesn't feel like it belongs where I think we're probably going to be the most if that's a word, or unrepresented area. You know, keeping that highway, just even that Highway 2, we're kind of like a chunk of that whole chunk of area is really important for us for, community wise. So.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
One of the neat things about this job is we learn about Alberta. I'm just trying to locate Joussard. Are you just south of the lake?
Yeah, we're right on the lake.
Okay, and how big is it?
It's a hamlet, so we're quite small. There's a few communities. We have Joussard, Fost, Canuso. I'm not sure if you've heard of any of those. Whitewater. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, and I echo my colleague Ms. Sampson's comments that we are hearing from the north, and it's because of people like you who have stepped up and said, look, you looked at what we proposed, and it just doesn't seem right, and I thank you for coming out, and you did very well.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But please
Bye-bye.
remain in to hear other presenters if you wish, if you have the time.
Okay, for sure. Thank you.
Going through the list, I'm just going to see, is Dorothy Anderson present? Okay, Stacy Mesner?
Yes, I'm here, sorry.
Good afternoon. Please
Good
tell
afternoon.
us where you are from and what electoral divisions you wish to comment on.
Sure. So my name is Stacy Messner. I'm the mayor for the town of Grimshaw, and we're located in the current Peace River Electoral Division.
Okay. Please proceed.
All right. So my speaking points today, the first one is the Northern Rural and Remote representation. So firstly, to maintain the votes and voices of the North and the true rural and remote residents of the province are critical to effective representation. I realize that electoral boundaries are created firstly based on population and understand the rationale for it. However, putting it into practicality, and since living in Northern Alberta for 14 years now, I've come to understand a few things. The large geographical region the North covers beyond larger urbans, such as Grand Prairie and Edmonton, is extremely vast. Citizens drive, and drive some more through all kinds of weather to get where they need to be for work, services, healthcare, and activities. We are trying to do all the same things a resident of a larger urban does within a driving distance of just over 455 kilometers, or close to 5 hours of driving time, according to Google Maps, on good driving condition days, between the proposed boundary of the Peace River Notley, where the southernmost point is, I think, at Athabasca River, and northernmost point at Paddle Prairie Métis Settlement. So that's just my first speaking point. The second is attracting MLA representation. So I guess in looking at the geographical vastness of our northern boundaries, what challenges does this present to attract and retain an MLA to run in a district where it is so large? Does it encourage individuals to run, or quite frankly, not at all? My third point is regarding economic development. In the Peace region, we are currently being considered for our large-scale nuclear development. And so we could see a lot of change in our population in the next 5 to 10 years for sure. So I guess my question would be, at what point will the boundary be reviewed and changed to accommodate any large-scale economic projects that are going to boost our population? And then my last speaking point is the boundary that splits a municipality. So I bring this matter forward not for feedback regarding the electoral district that Grimshaw currently is in, but in hopes it might bring perspective to the challenges felt by our neighbors in Big Lakes County. Although in our other municipalities and in larger urbans with more population, an electoral boundary may split an urban center, and this may not be seen as an issue due to a high population. However, when a boundary splits a municipality with low population and large geographical reach, this is an issue related to effective representation that needs to be considered by the Commission. And so I'll use an example that Grimshaw currently is experiencing from a school board perspective, actually. So we have a school division, the Peace River School Division, where the highway that runs right through Grimshaw, Highway 2, is the boundary between two school districts in our community of 2,600 people. So the east side residents have a trustee and the west side have a different trustee. What this does in rural municipalities, when there is an actual boundary split, it creates confusion, and in some ways, our council thinks deters residents from firstly, one, knowing who their trustee is, and secondly, will they even come out to vote? We saw a huge decrease in voting turnout in October 2025 for the school trustee election. And I can honestly say that I saw on social media how many residents were questioning which ward they belonged to and where they were to vote. So I just thought I would use that as an example. And those are all of my speaking points. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you, the boundaries that are proposed in our report for Peace River Notley, they don't cut through a municipality, do they?
So I guess I'm looking at the corner where Big Lakes County is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm speaking more for them because I know of the concerns that it may present. So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Okay.
But
Okay. So it's not, just to be clear, Grimshaw or Peace River itself isn't carved up.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm trying to do is trying to speak up in a situation we're currently experiencing in our community and how that could translate to something in Big Lakes County and what they may be experiencing with the proposed boundary changes.
So are you content with the existing boundaries? In other words, you don't like what we've proposed for the north, for your corner of the north, but you could live with the existing boundary you had before. Is that right?
Yes, we could live with that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for reporting or submitting from Grimshaw. Dr. Martin, any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Mayor Mesner, I wanted to thank you for your presentation. Rest assured that some of the themes, like we need to preserve and strengthen the Northern voice, is something we've heard a very great deal of. I will share with you the fact that of the 1,100 odd letters we've received in the last 3 months, more than 100 came from the North. So you should take some pride in the fact that at least 100 people are actually prepared to do something quite old-fashioned, namely write a letter to us on this point. I wanted to press you in your role as a mayor to ask you about growth prospects. You mentioned the high likelihood of a nuclear project in its development, but could you characterize the local economy in other terms? I mean, are you largely agricultural? Is it's oil and gas? What's the mix?
Mm-hmm. So largely agriculture. I would say forestry is also something that Grimshaw sees the benefits of. I mean, to the north of us of Manning and north of Peace River, that's where you're going to see more logging and mill industry. And then some oil and gas. I mean, oil and gas has kind of been on the down low for some time. But I would say primarily agriculture.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Sampson?
Thanks for coming on today. I appreciate your comments. And just, I wanted to answer your question about boundary reviews. It occurs every 8 to 10 years. It's actually 2 election cycles on average. So when we are finished and hand in the report in March, our job is done, and whatever is done would not be looked at again by a commission for another 8 to 10 years. So we're hoping to get it right. So thanks for your comments. And the other thing that I had not considered, you mentioned attraction and retention of MLAs. Have you ever, is that common that people would not have interest at that level in a political office in your area?
I'm not exactly sure, but I would say that for anyone who potentially wants to run in the future, they're going to have a bigger job to do than before if that boundary is expanded or changes. It's a lot of work for an MLA to do their job in a district that's over 500 kilometers north-south long. I totally appreciate their commitment, and it takes a special someone to say, I'm going to do that. So I just thought I might raise it as a point.
And just in closing on that point, I can tell you this. I doubt that out of the 10 electoral districts that hold the MLAs of the North, there isn't a single one that doesn't love their job.
Yeah.
I don't know where they came, like how they got to love it, that they would want to spend their days living in their vehicles driving, but they do, and they do it enthusiastically. So that to me was an eye-opener. So thank you for your comments today. I appreciate them.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Evans, any questions or dialogue with Mayor Mesner?
Sorry, I thought we were done.
No, we don't let you go that easy.
Okay.
I don't think I have any questions for you. Thank you for your submissions.
Okay, we do let you go that easy. Okay.
All right then.
Thank you for coming in and presenting, and please stay if you can to hear the other presenters. Our next presenter is Mary Meisner.
Hello?
Yes. Hello, Miss Meisner?
Hi. Yes.
Okay. So please identify yourself. Tell us what riding you live in, what community, and which electoral divisions you wish to comment on.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Mrs. Mary Meisner. I am a retired community health nurse and resident of Spruce Grove, Alberta. So I'll be discussing the Spruce Grove Stony Plain voting district. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about the proposed changes to our electoral district. I have revisited my original submission of December 9th, 25, and I further reviewed data, geography, and the Commission's recommendation. I feel that the Commission's proposed boundary change has more merit than mine based on the following. Even though Stony Plain and Spruce Grove are very much closely connected communities in the area of services, economies, recreation, travel, and voting patterns, Spruce Grove will continue to grow in population. The Commission's recommendation to establish Spruce Grove as a separate electoral district makes sense. This allows for population and physical growth without having to encroach on Edmonton city limits or having to split the city of Spruce Grove in half. The Commission's boundary to the east and north steers clear of other major urban populations such as St. Albert or Edmonton. This avoids siphoning off votes from areas that are not similar to Spruce Grove. One of my main considerations in making my submission was to ensure the risk or impression of political gerrymandering was avoided. This risk could be presented by diluting votes from an included slice of Edmonton City's boundary within Spruce Grove's voting district. I did read some of the submissions on our voting district, and I was quite concerned to view one particular one that appeared weighed down with a bit of observable gerrymandering. When I carefully studied the revised borders put forward by the Commission, I see that there is room for Edmonton City boundary to expand further west without having to merge into a rural district or change an outlying electoral district. The Commission proposes that Stony Plain will merge into the Drayton Valley Devon electoral district. This amalgamation will still provide Stony Plain with fair representation, as Drayton Valley Devon's past history of voting is compatible and comparable with Stony Plain's voting trends. Therefore, in closing, I would like to thank the Commission for their common sense and well-researched recommendation. I fully support the Commission's proposal for Spruce Grove to become a separate electoral district and Stony Plain to be combined with Drayton Valley Devon electoral district. I would also like to commend the good work of Aaron Roth, EBC Administrator. He returns emails promptly and is most helpful in explaining procedures in a respectful manner and showing patience. If I need to amend my original proposal, I would certainly be happy to do so.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Meisner. You just put a smile on the face of somebody I'm just looking at over the screen. Yes, he does tremendous work for us and for the province. And thank you for your comments relative to the proposal. We're never 100% sure what type of reaction we're going to get when we create these new scenarios. So hearing from a longtime resident of the community is very helpful and beneficial to us. But I want to let the Commission have some dialogue and question and answer with you. So, Dr. Martin, anything you wish to raise with Mrs. Meisner?
Well, I'd just like to say, you're totally right. that the interim was probably, on balance, the right thing to do. The whole growth of the area between Edmonton and Spruce Grove along both 16 and 16X has been tremendous, and in some ways very exciting, and I fully expect it's going to continue. I'm interested in your thoughts about the area that immediately surrounds Spruce Grove on its north side and on its south side, as our interim included a fair big chunk of hinterland, so to speak. Perhaps we overdid it. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think you had much of a choice because you have to allow for expansion. And I don't know exactly if a lot of those people own acreages and work in Edmonton and do business in Spruce Grove. So that's actually, that's a difficult question to answer. But I think you're allowing room for growth. But I just get a sense that a lot of those folks aren't big farmers. There are a few, like there's a big dairy farm in the area, but I'm thinking they're more, how do you say it? Suburbanites of Spruce Grove.
Exactly what I would call it. I mean, we often talk about urban versus rural, but that's a little crude because there is a gradation. And you're right, it is sort of suburban. They're not baling hay, they're going to the golf course.
Right, yes.
Thank you.
A lovely thing to do.
Thank you. Ms. Sampson?
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate your thoughts, particularly because when we were in person, we heard a lot about keep Stony Plain and Spruce Grove together. So I suspected that we were going to get some pushback in this area, but surprisingly, we have not. So you have reinforced that this is inevitable, that Spruce Grove will stand on its own. And I'm happy that you're pleased because, like my colleague said, it is the right way to move forward. Thank you again.
Mr. Evans, any questions or comments?
I just want to know if you're related to Aaron Roth.
No, actually, I grew up in Manitoba and lived many years there and worked many years in the Interlake region.
That was a very nice, genuine. I just wanted to make sure that it was as genuine and a nice comment, and it's both. Aaron's a phenomenal. He's helped us greatly, and we appreciate him. Thank you for your submissions.
Yes, well, thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, and please feel free to stay to hear the rest of the submissions this afternoon.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to our next presenter, Francesca Ward.
Hi there.
Hi. Okay, please identify yourself and tell us where you're from and what electoral divisions you wish to comment on.
No problem. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am Mayor Ward and presenting on behalf of the Town of Slave Lake Council regarding the proposed elimination of the Lesser Slave Lake Provincial Electoral District. Our council strongly believes this proposal undermines effective representation, fragments a functioning regional hub, and further weakens Northern Alberta's voice in the Legislative Assembly. This is not about preserving boundaries for convenience. It is about preserving representation that reflects how Northern Alberta actually functions. The Supreme Court of Canada made it clear in Carter v. Saskatchewan that the purpose of electoral boundaries is not strict mathematical parity, but effective representation. The court explicitly recognized that geography, community history, minority representation, and accessibility must be weighed alongside population equality. Alberta's own Electoral Boundaries Commission Act reflects this principle by allowing special low population districts where vast geography, remoteness, and Indigenous populations justify deviations from the provincial average. The Lesser Slave Lake District meets every one of those criteria. It covers an immense geographic area, including multiple First Nations and Métis communities, sits far from the legislature, and contains no large urban center. Removing this district prioritized numerical symmetry over meaningful access to representation, which is precisely what the Supreme Court cautioned against. Beyond the legal framework, the proposed map demonstrates a fundamental disconnect between provincial boundary design and real regional governance. This region is home to multiple First Nations and Métis communities whose cultural, economic, and service connections are anchored through Slave Lake. These relationships are built on trust, proximity, and long-standing collaboration. Fragmenting these communities across multiple ridings risks weakening their access to representation and their ability to engage meaningfully with government, which runs directly counter to the principle of effective representation and reconciliation. Slave Lake functions as the primary service hub for the surrounding region. Residents from Canuso, Driftpile, Wabasca, Smith, and rural Big Lakes County rely on Slave Lake for health services, education, housing coordination, justice services, retail access, emergency response, and tourism infrastructure. These relationships are not theoretical. They are operational and daily. The province itself governs this region as a coordinated unit. By ministerial order, the town of Slave Lake has been directed to collaborate with the Municipal District of Opportunity and of Lesser Slave River on housing authority governance. Yet under the proposed boundaries, these mandated partners would be represented by different MLAs, directly contradicting the province's own administrative structure. Educational governance tells the exact same story. The High Prairie School Division operates as one integrated education system across Slave Lake, Canuso, Joussard, High Prairie, and surrounding rural communities. Dividing this unified school system across multiple electoral districts complicates advocacy for capital funding, student supports, transportation planning, and staffing stability. Health governance also recognizes this region as a single functional unit. Alberta's Health Regional Advisory Council 4 encompasses the Slave Lake High Prairie Wabasca corridor, and it was developed within this provincial term. The proposed boundaries fracture this health region politically, creating fragmented accountability for emergency coverage, physician recruitment, hospital capacity, and seniors care planning. Tourism further reinforces the hub reality. Slave Lake serves as the gateway to provincial parks, lakeshore recreation, seasonal events, accommodations, and visitor services for the broader Lesser Slave Lake region. Tourism drives seasonal population surges that place measurable pressure on emergency services, policing, transportation corridors, health capacity, and workforce housing. Fragmenting this tourism region across ridings weakens coordinated advocacy for infrastructure investment, public safety, resourcing, and long-term economic diversification. In practical terms, visitors and seasonal workers experience this region as one system. Only the political map would treat it as disconnected. Perhaps the most concerning, this redistribution reduces northern representation at a time when legislature itself is expanding. While Alberta increases from 87 to 89 seats, Northern Alberta loses one MLA. Northern Alberta continues to generate a disproportionate share of Alberta's GDP through energy, forestry, agriculture, and transportation corridors. Yet under this proposal, the North loses representation while the legislature itself grows. The economic engine of the province should not simultaneously experience a reduction in political voice. This continues a long-term trend of political influence shifting southward despite the North's vast landmass, significant Indigenous population, and disproportionate contribution to provincial resource revenues. Furthermore, Council is not asking for special treatment. We're asking for the Commission to apply its own legislative mandate and constitutional guidance consistently. Effective representation requires that elected boundaries reflect how communities live, access services, and participate in governance. The Lesser Slave Lake District exists because the region exists. The map should follow reality and not erase it. Population formulas do not deliver emergency services, educate our children, or keep our communities connected. People and geography do, and electoral boundaries must recognize that. You can balance a population spreadsheet in Edmonton and Calgary, but you cannot govern Northern Alberta from a calculator. Thank you for your consideration, and I welcome any questions and commentary from the Commission.
Well, Mayor Ward, thank you very much for your presentation. It is very punchy and very well laid out and comprehensive. Thank you so much. That's the type of information we need. And I'll turn it over to the rest of the Commission. I'm sure there's going to be some questions. So, Dr. Martin, any questions of Mayor Ward?
Mayor Ward, we have heard from you as well as from others who've presented, and the over 100 people who wrote letters in the last couple of months about the need to preserve the Northern voice. Message received. But with every speaker, we learn some more granular information, so it's always extremely valuable to have people like yourself come and speak, because you're in a position of having to balance budgets, oversee planning arrangements, coordinating with other communities, and it's fascinating to see how those linkages are maintained and how they may be damaged, as you suggest, by the interim boundaries that have been proposed. I must say I'm very curious about your relationships and your working arrangements with Peerless Lake and the MD of Opportunity number 17. I just didn't think that there was that much connectivity, but clearly there is. Could you speak to that?
I would love to. There is a substantial amount of connectivity between those regions. An interesting thing regarding our community is that there are 14 First Nations and settlements within an hour and a half driving distance of Slave Lake, the majority of which are represented by our current electoral district boundaries, not the one that is newly proposed. And we have a multitude of organizations, including Alberta North Central Alliance, which has representatives from those communities, as well as our housing authority, the Lesser Slave Lake Regional Housing Authority. One of the ministerial orders is a partnership with the MD of Opportunity. So these long-standing relationships are going to be divided. And I understand that not living here, you may not be able to, a map doesn't describe how we live. A map doesn't show how we live. And that's what I was hoping to bring to you today. Access and services of both work and recreation are central around Slave Lake, honestly. We are the hub, and I wanted to convey for our community and our neighbors that this is how we live. And by parting us off into those districts, that's not going to reflect who we are.
Thank you.
And by the way, did you submit what you just presented to the commission in writing?
There is a 29-page report that was submitted. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sampson.
Thank you for your presentation today. I appreciate the time that it takes to put it together and be here to deliver it. I don't think that any of the presenters from the north have not given us more information that we find valuable. And so I appreciate that. We've got some things to talk about and some reasons to change, because you're absolutely right. What we're doing and what your reality, lived reality every day is quite a bit different. So thank you again for your time and information.
No, I appreciate the commentary there. Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, thank you for your submissions. I just had a question on, you mentioned that the breaking up, or the our division and creation of electoral districts that didn't include some Indian bands as opposed to others, impacted reconciliation. Can you just help me understand what you meant there, and how that would impact or detract from reconciliation?
Reconciliation would be taking a look for, in my opinion, is the reality is we are all going to work and exist together. And reconciliation is supposed to, from part of reconciliation would be to facilitate that, to work as communities. And changing of boundaries is just going to make it harder. Changing of boundaries is going to make it harder to advocate for the needs of First Nations. And again, I'm representative of the town of Slave Lake, but our Indigenous population in our current electoral riding is approximately 25% self-reported. That also includes within, the percentage is the same within the town of Slave Lake. So we have a significant Indigenous population whose First Nations, which they may not live on, obviously, if they're living in the town, are now disconnected. So we're relying on our MLA to communicate to the province the needs of our First Nations populations. And now they're segregated from each other. I believe the Indian Regional Council will be presenting in a bit with Alberta North Central Alliance, and I believe the chief would likely be able to better speak to the connections there, because that is going to be disconnected. Everything about how we live and work, respectfully, is blown up by the way the proposal is. So we will continue to exist and work the way we do. It is just going to make the lives of every one of us harder, including your elected officials, including your MLA. We will do what we do, like we always do in the North. We figure it out. But respectfully, this is strong opposition to this.
Can you give me the bands that you referenced again, just quickly?
Well, there's 14 different First Nations. So we have Drift Pile, Swan River, Peerless Trout, Sarge First Nation, Whitefish, Loon River. I'm gonna forget someone. Did I say Swan River? I'm gonna miss them. There's about there's 14. I can take.
I'll look at your submissions.
Yeah, in my submission, I have we have the map there. So Sarge First Nation borders our community. We share a border with that. Within 45 minutes, there's Swan River, Drift Pile, and then going the other way, you have obviously Big Stone, Peerless, Trout, Loon, and then continuing more Sucker Creek as well. I know I'm leaving someone out, so that's not an all-encompassing list. But there's also Métis settlements, there's Gift Lake, mostly referred to as the back lakes up here. just speaking casually, we have so many that access services. If you take a look, when Whitefish First Nation had fires, where were they evacuated to? Slave Lake. We took 700 people in within 4 hours notice on my first year after the by-election. And so that's when I speak to how we will rally together, how we will continue to exist the way we will, regardless of electoral boundaries. We will. But it is going to make advocacy for the North. We can't deliver a baby in our hospital. I lose a person on the highway on Highway 88 at least every month. Can't deliver babies, and our ER closes. Now, the communities all around us have the exact same issues. Does Westlock have this issue? No, they actually have knee surgeons there. So now by joining Slave Lake to Westlock, we're just added on. We don't, I looked at Westlock Town Council's priorities, and one of them is being a commuter hub to Edmonton. That is nowhere near the priorities of our region. Still completely valid for their community, but I'm unsure how an MLA is going to effectively represent the region when you have such competing issues and such disparity, even between healthcare services.
Well, Mayor Ward, thank you again. And just so you know, your own MLA will be presenting next week on a time slot designated. And I'm not sure, you may be the third or fourth northern mayor that has presented so far today. And I have no doubt that the municipal governance of the North is absolutely superb based on all these presentations. And thank you for giving us a gentle corrective on our interim report.
No, I appreciate it's complicated work that you do. You're looking at the whole province and not the North, and I would be doing a disservice to our community and our region if we didn't speak up when something we feel wasn't right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and you're more than welcome to remain in to hear the rest of the presentations. Thank you. Our next presenter before our break is Peter McKay from Grand Prairie.
He's a no-show.
Oh, no, he didn't show? Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe we should have our break now. Let's break for 10:02. Well, let's come back at 2:50 for sure, and then we'll have plenty of time. Yeah. live. Okay. Good afternoon again, everyone. We're reconvening after our mid-afternoon break for the Alberta Electoral Boundaries Commission. I'm wondering, is Peter McKay, who is scheduled to present at 2:50, is he in the virtual room?
No.
No? Okay. We'll call on Mr. Okay. Are there representatives from the Alberta North Central Alliance? Jennifer Churchill, are you present? Can you hear me?
I am present, but I'm just, if we could. And I could let them know that we're ready to go, if that makes sense.
Okay, very well. Thanks for that deferral. We'll ask if Ken Matthews is present, and is he ready to present?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good afternoon. Are you ready to go a little early?
Yep, I can go anytime.
Please proceed. Identify yourself and tell us what riding you live in and what electoral divisions you wish to comment on.
Hey. Well, I live in Big Lakes County, of course, which is within the Lesser Slave Lake constituency. And just a little history. I'm going to live a little history in myself and then on with some of the history of the Lesser Slave Lake constituency. In 1971, I moved here from Southern Ontario. I kept bees for about 15 years commercially. I worked for the Alberta government in northern and remote housing for about 13 years. I managed a retail lumber hardware store in High Prairie for 14 years. And upon retiring, I entered into the local municipal government here, initially with the MD of Big Lakes that turned into Big Lakes County, served 15 years as a councillor in Areve. I've been on the steering committee for the new High Prairie Hospital. I spent 10 years on the first Health Advisory Council in the north here. So the Lesser Slave Lake constituency, and I'm sure you people are aware of this, it was originally started back in 1971. And it has been a major contributor to the provincial scene ever since. Changes have been made to the boundaries in the past, and some should be noted. In 1993, the boundaries were pushed north, all the way to the territories. In 2003, it was changed back because of course, the distance to travel and the impossibility of an MLA being able to represent that large an area. In 2010, the boundaries were again adjusted to reflect the boundaries of residents, councils, and MLAs dealing with the same map. The current recommendation that has been put forward would have Big Lakes County residents council dealing with four elected MLAs. And if that wouldn't add confusion, I don't know what would, but that's what the boundaries show now, or recommended boundaries. There are minor changes again in 2017, but very minor. I think Calling Lake was added to the north. And back in 2017, I was involved at that time when the review took place as a representative from Big Lakes County. And again, the concerns that have been brought up here time and time again is that there has to be some sort of adjustments made to the criteria for the boundaries. Population cannot be the only factor. I think as Mr. Calababa before me said that you can cover a whole constituency in the city of Edmonton by traveling maybe an hour and a half in any one direction. Whereas the north, that's impossible. It's an hour and a half from here to Slave Lake on a good day. And we've had some days lately where you weren't traveling to Slave Lake in an hour and a half. And again, that I would recommend strongly that the future recommendation be that boundaries remain as they are currently, with the exception of the southern boundary be moved south to include all of Big Lakes County, which it doesn't and hasn't for a while, including the town of Swan Hills. And being involved in the local politics, I know that the town of Swan Hills would far sooner be in this constituency as it is now than where they are. You people are not likely aware of it, but Big Lakes County heavily subsidizes Swan Hills. In fact, Swan Hills may not exist today if it wasn't for the funds that Big Lakes County put in there. And if they were to dissolve or make that move to decide to dissolve, they would have to be taken over by Big Lakes County because that's the constituency that they're within. And it should be also noted that there's at least one, possibly two Hutterite colonies being established southwest of High Prairie or in Big Lakes County. And they usually average between 80 and 100 people again. And right now, the one's already in the process of being established. They already have their camp there. They've already put up some buildings. The other one is very good chance there's going to be a second one down there. I just also might add that Lesser Slave Lake, since its existence, has been the home of two MLAs, one being the first Muslim MLA in the province, Mr. Larry Shaban, and the other is the longest serving Indigenous MLA, Pearl Callahason. So they've served the majority of the time since the inception of the constituency. So if I could just take another minute here, I agree totally with most of the comments that have been made by previous ones, especially some of the ones that Carolyn Calababa made and the mayor from Slave Lake. Although I would not agree that they're the hub of the North, but of course that's been an ongoing dispute between the two communities for a number of years. But the boundaries that have been taken out, it actually splits Big Lakes County kind of in half. And it takes out 3 Métis settlements, 3 of 8 in the province, and at least 6 First Nations that are within the boundaries of Big Lakes County. It separates them, and as the mayor's turned out, the trading centers for all those communities is Slave Lake or High Prairie. And it again, going back to having 4 MLAs representing one municipality, I just don't see that as a workable situation at all. Again, thanks for your time. And again, this area, Big Lakes County and that area, we incorporate or facilitate all the major industries in the province. We have forestry. We have West Fraser's big plant is in High Prairie. We have Tokal here, the strand board plant. We have different energy companies. I wouldn't even guess at the amount of energy companies, especially in the Swan Hills area. And tourism is another thing that's growing. A point that should be made is that the Dusard area and across the lake from it is Hilliard Bay Estates, two huge communities that in the summertime likely would house at least 4,000 more people than what they would in the wintertime. And Shaw's Point Resort, which I know for a fact on a holiday weekend a couple of years ago, they had 10,000 people at that resort. So those are all factors, of course, that affect our healthcare systems and all that. But I guess the other point is that there's times of the year here where when we have a lot more than what provincial requirement is for population as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Appreciate your presentation. I've got a couple of questions. I'm a little unclear. You said that Big Lake County, under our proposal, would be divided into 4 electoral divisions, having 4 MLAs. Just recite the ridings you're talking about. It would be.
Well, you've got the one to the. I haven't got them in front of me, but the Peace River one that Todd Lohan currently represents, that would come right up, take in High Prairie.
Okay. Mackenzie?
Mackenzie would go, of course, to, I don't know how he's possibly going to manage that, being the Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Just trying to identify the ridings right now. I wanted.
Well, it's the Mackenzie.
Yeah.
And then one to the one that Slave Lake goes into is that Lac the Bish, that area.
Okay.
And then the one to immediately south of Swan Hills where White Court.
Okay. Okay.
Those people.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So that was the only clarification I wanted to make, and thank you for the history lesson. I'm old enough to remember a Larry Shaban, actually, and I didn't realize he represented that riding. But let me have some of the commission members dialogue with you. Mr. Evans, any questions or points you want to raise with this presenter?
I just wanted the same clarification you wanted on the 4 MLAs, and it looks like, yeah, that's correct. I don't think we had realized that. And the other was, I just want to make sure that you said specifically that Swan Hills wanted to be part of the lesser slave, the existing lesser Slave Lake constituency.
Yeah, are certainly part of Big Lakes County, but again, with the boundaries, that's another thing I want to indicate is that the boundaries shown on the maps that you put out, these new maps, the boundaries of Big Lakes County are not accurate at all. I don't know who did the map, but they don't even show Swan Hills being part of Big Lakes County. And Swan Hills is well within Big Lakes County's boundaries. Our boundary to the east of Swan Hills is likely, I would say 8 miles to the east at least. And to the south of Swan Hills, it's another 8 or 10 miles.
I don't think it shows the south boundary of Big Lakes County, but it shows the west boundary.
And that is not accurate. I'll guarantee you it's not accurate. Unless you've got different maps than I've looked at.
That's sir. Okay.
But again, my point, before we got sidetracked with that, not that it's not valuable for certain, but Swan Hills, that town you're saying would like to be part of what is it currently the constituency of Lesser Slave Lake?
Well, yes, because, well, actually, they're not there they're now, because they're not,
Now,
for some reason, though Big Lakes County is, they're well within Big Lakes County's boundaries. The electrical boundaries down there, I don't know exactly where they cut off, but they cut off north of Swan Hills. So right now they're part of the West Loch Barhead.
right, but you're saying they should be added to the Lesser Slave Lake?
They would, well, like I say, we worked closely with them over the years. That, of course, respectively, that's where a lot of the revenue for Big Lakes County comes from, is in the Swan Hills area. But they've always had a different MLA than we did. So they, if they wanted something municipally, they come to Big Lakes County. If they needed to go to the province, then they go exactly the opposite direction. But if I understood that they'd already put in a written submission asking that they be included within our boundaries, but I don't know. That's just what I've heard.
Others have made that request as well, sir, so you know.
Yeah.
Anything else, John?
No, thank
Okay,
you
Ms.
very
Sampson?
much.
Thank you for your time this afternoon. I appreciate the information you gave us, but I'll just share with you that before your call, we had Mayor Francesca Ward on the line, and
Yes.
She has assured us that Slave Lake is the hub. So thank
Like I
you.
said, that debate's gone on for a long time.
We
I
can
like it.
We sit on the new Zone 4 Health Council or Advisory Council together now, so we'll maybe get it straightened out somehow.
Okay, good
Yeah,
luck.
it's the new Edmonton-Calgary divide. We're the Edmonton-Calgary divide of the north.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, we can solve a few of the problems. We can't solve all your problems, I can assure you.
Listen, as the Alberta North Central Alliance, it's my job to tell High Prairie and Slave Lake, you guys just need to get along. It's about us, not.
Here we go.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, anything more, Susan?
No, I'm good,
Okay.
thank you.
Dr. Martin?
I'm just confused. I mean, we had MLA Van Dyken this morning telling us that the center of Alberta geographically is near Barhead, so it's very difficult to keep all these competing claims. No, I wanted to thank Mr. Matthews for his presentation, and it reinforces a lot of the themes that we've heard in the letters and in the submissions that we have heard today. So thank you, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you very much.
And the center is closer to Swan Hills again than it is Barhead, so.
It's just outside
We
Swan
need a
Hill.
commission on this, I think.
And that's a fact.
Okay, that brings us back now to Jennifer Churchill and, someone else too.
Mike Evans.
Okay, Jennifer, I'll let you speak and introduce whoever's assisting you.
Perfect. And you guys can see my slideshow?
Yes.
Perfect. It's been updated since the one I had sent earlier. So thank you very much for having us today. My name is Jennifer Churchill. I'm here with Alberta North Central Alliance, and I also have here Mike, he is the executive director of the Lesser Slave Lake Indian Regional Council. Mike, cut me out anytime. So who does ANSA and within that the Lesser Slave Lake Indian Regional Council represent? We have 5 First Nations and 5 municipalities, which basically makes up the Lesser Slave River riding. Our boundaries are quite similar. We are working together to coordinate and to collaborate, to communicate, share information, but also to advocate to bring supports and services to this region. So within the Alberta North Central Alliance is the MD of Opportunity, Big Stone Cree Nation, the Town of Slave Lake, the MD of Lesser Slave River, Sawridge First Nation, Swan River First Nation, Driftpaw First Nation, Sucker Creek First Nation, and the Town of High Prairie. Lesser Slave Lake Indian Regional Council represents 4 of those nations. Mike, I don't know if you want to add in there a little bit.
Not now, thanks.
Okay. Our area is over 55,000 kilometers of north central Alberta, which is about almost 9% of the province of Alberta's landmass. So our MLA represents our entire region, as we define it, which is almost 9% of the province of Alberta. Within our region, we have integrated rural, remote, and Indigenous communities within that piece. So some of it, when this all came to be, and the conversation is to remove our one riding that represents all of those communities, your report is recommending that we split it into three. So on one end of the lakeshore in the northern piece would go in with the Peace River, one would go into the Mackenzie riding that's being recommended, and then the Slave Lake Sawridge First Nation portion would go towards the Athabasca Westlock. MD of Opportunity also would join, that northern part would join Mackenzie County. So they would, not Mackenzie County, Mackenzie riding. That particular riding recommendation would increase the region from 8% is where we're at now, 8 to almost 9%, to, some of my rough math said 22% of the province of Alberta's landmass would be represented in that Mackenzie riding. We also were a little bit surprised when we read the report that, we're talking about removing our riding, but we had one local session with two people that represented. And so there was kind of, when we were talking about representation and those feedback pieces, and you've had lots of representation today too from my region, the conversations about, the idea of a lakeshore and some of those history pieces didn't hit the report because there was very little representation. And so it reduces regional input, and so we appreciate that we have the opportunity today. The report identifies that our population is 50% below the provincial average. We're not confident that that number is accurately represented. Town of Slave Lake almost has 10,000 people. The MD of Opportunity, which encompasses several nations, Métis settlements, etc., they're sitting at approximately 10,000. Big Stone Cree Nation has a large population, so I'm a little bit, as a region, we've had conversations about how accurate is that data. How accurate is the count from all of the Indigenous communities on the area, but also where's the reflection and the including of how many oil and gas workers we have in the region at any given time. You've heard already today, but we have some communities in the summertime triple in size based on where they live in the winter and where they stay in the summer. And so I understand that the math matters, but in this sense, does the way that people are counted, if that's so essential, we're not convinced that that is necessarily an accurate representation. But also, it's been mentioned before, and here it comes again, is population does not reflect our representation needs. As a region, we are a little bit surprised that we had a statistical, we have the smallest riding in terms of population, according to your report. We were a little bit surprised that we, on paper, look like we have such a statistical advantage in terms of representation, because we don't feel like that increase in representation has meant increase in services or an increase in supports into our region. Alberta North Central Alliance and Lesser Slave Lake Indian Regional Council are two examples of communities coming together to work together to bring supports and services because there is a little bit of a shortage. In the past, we've been granted 615(2) protection. We have some questions about why is that not now continuing? Why we know that there was 3 communities or 3 ridings in the province gets that exemption. Once we had it, where is that going? We also our geographical scale and service challenges have remained the same in those pieces. It's interesting to me that you guys mentioned earlier that the province of Alberta is growing with increased population. And rightfully so, but we're not seeing that in the north. Your report even suggests that there's a case of the north is shrinking in population, and so maybe there's a bigger understanding of what's going on, that a province is growing, but 60% of it is struggling. Is it a lack of resources or investment, or how does that look? Sorry, I'll go faster. So with your report, you're going to split groups like ANSA that we're collaborating together and working together to bring supports and services to the region, and just an awareness of what it's like to live in North Central Alberta. Lesser Slave Lake Indian Regional Council has existed for quite a bit longer than ANSA, and Mike can speak to that. They signed Treaty 8 together, and in fact were one band in 1899 under Kinniseo's band. Your proposal will split Sawridge from the rest of the nations in Lesser Slave Lake Indian Regional Council. As Mayor Ward and as Kent Matthews has mentioned earlier, we have healthcare overlaps, education, labor, transportation systems between the whole entire north and south of the lakeshore, up through Wabasca, Red Earth, down and through Slave Lake, across over to the other pieces. The boundary fragmentation really makes it difficult to advocate for a region, and we're already having significant issues with that. But also, for an MLA to be able to have the ability to travel in something that large, especially Mackenzie, when you're looking at 22%. Where I live, I would Zama City would be in the same riding as me, and they're 6 hours away if there was a road that directly connects us. Boundaries should reflect how communities function. Yes, that I understand that it is numbers. Yes, I understand that lots of it is how do you make things equitable, but fair is not always equal, right? Go ahead, Mike. You're muted, Mike.
Sorry, that's better. Thank you, Jennifer. I just wanted to add a little bit more historical information that I think is worthy of consideration here. Jennifer had mentioned that Treaty 8 was signed on the south shores of Lesser Slave Lake in 1899, that the Indigenous communities in this region were the original signatories, the first signatories of that treaty. And so the region has a historical significance in that context. And the other thing that she was saying about the constituency should reflect a certain regionality in terms of the way that they work together. There's an enormous amount of existing cooperation within this region already between the mainstream communities, the Métis settlements, and the First Nations. Those services have grown up naturally to reflect a unity that now is being divided through the proposal that has been made. And I think we have to acknowledge that the boundaries to some extent are arbitrary. You have criteria that you're trying to meet in terms of the proposal that you put in front of that's in front of the commission that will be going to the legislature, but it is missing, I think, some of these other considerations about why the region is as significant as it is. The other thing we've got now to this slide, I just wanted to mention, I'd forgotten that Larry Shaven had been the MLA up there for a number of years, but this constituency, the Slave Lake constituency, has for 28 of the last 36 years been represented by an Indigenous MLA. And there isn't another constituency in Alberta that has anywhere near that kind of consistent representation from the Indigenous community. There's little enough Indigenous representation in caucus, in government, regardless that is being satisfied, if you will, that a certain perspective is being brought to the table out of the North consistently for the last 3 decades that hasn't been true anywhere else. And there's a very real concern in the Indigenous community that if the constituency is split as proposed, that there won't be an Indigenous representative in any of them, because the place where the strength of unity and action is most present will have been divided. And that's a real concern to these communities who have endeavored as well to represent interests even beyond themselves. Jennifer had mentioned that regional council has existed for a long time. It was the first tribal council that was incorporated in Canada back in 1971. For a long time, its leadership included Senator and Chief Walter Twin out of Sawridge. Originally, the regional council was also very large. It had 11 member nations. Over time, due to geography and again, existing service areas, regional council has become smaller. 3 of its members that are farther to the west have formed their own tribal council and are within the Grand Prairie constituencies. And there are some others that are farther north that have created a new tribal council, the Kataspina Tribal Council. But this body here in this region has remained strong for 50 years. And the proposal really risks taking that apart. So those are some specifically Indigenous considerations that I wanted to bring to your attention. Happy to answer any questions you might have. And before I go, I'm certain that there are over 200 Mike Evanses in Alberta, but Dr. Martin, yes, it's me.
Okay. I was just going to ask you to state your name again,
Mike
sir.
Mike Evans.
Thank you for this tag team presentation. And I have to confess, I was distracted at the beginning, Jennifer. And your first slide, I couldn't read it clearly, but could you just recap?
Okay.
Could you just give us another recap of geographically and representatively who your members are? Because it gives me I think it'll give me a much better context, and then I'm going to open it up to the commission.
So, Mike mentioned that regional council was the first in Canada of their type. Alberta North Central Alliance is the first regional group in Canada of our type where we have municipalities and nations sitting together at a table to have a conversation about what our region needs, because we have that many needs. So within that is the MD of Opportunity, Big Stone Cree Nation, the MD of Lesser Slave River, Town of Slave Lake, Sawridge First Nation, Big Lakes County, Swan River First Nation, Driftpaw First Nation, Sucker Creek First Nation, and the Town of High Prairie.
And there's one other nation not captured on this map, which is the Kapawino First Nation, but they are not a member of regional council.
And they are no longer a member of ANSA either. There are other communities within this region that we advocate for as well, but they're not. They have chosen not to collaborate at this given particular time. Actually, Big Lakes County, which you can see on that map, has the most Indigenous communities in all of Canada. Actually, they have more nations and Métis settlements within their boundaries as opposed to any other municipal or government within Canada. Big MD of Opportunity is something like 65% Indigenous. They're the only municipality within Alberta that is actually primarily Indigenous.
Now, am I correct in understanding that all those counties, municipalities you just listed, they are all contained within the existing Lesser Slave Lake riding?
Yes, they are.
So there's a bit of a real cohesion that exists with what is present, and we in our interim report have, in a sense, blown up that wonderful cohesion.
Yes.
Okay.
And if Mayor Ward wants to turn on a camera, she's also the Town of Slave Lake as part of ANSA. But we've had to collaborate together because, as we mentioned before, we're a little bit surprised that we have a statistical advantage. Within that map that I'm showing you right now, we have 4 hospitals, and you can't have a baby in any of those 4 hospitals. We have some of the highest level of diabetics in all of Alberta in that whole region, besides some of the nations that are bringing in diabetic foot care. we have to travel to Edmonton or Grand Prairie for diabetic foot care. Within that region, we have roads that are crumbling. All of them are one lane with very few turnouts. Travel Alberta, if you go to Travel Alberta website, you will see on our region, we have the Lesser Slave Lake, like the actual lake. You're not going to see any of our communities highlighted on Travel Alberta's website, and that was something that we've been working on. We're working together because there's a need and a gap, right? And so the fact that I don't want to say, but the fact that we exist is because we need to exist. We have to work together to do so.
Okay, thank you.
There's a ton of advocacy still that can be done that is independent, I guess, of whether there's one MLA or 3 or 4, except that this is a region that has its own internal logic and coherence that would be disrupted by the proposal that's been put on the table. And we'd be a lot happier if that didn't happen. You know, there's a kind of an unprecedented collaboration between the mainstream community and the Indigenous communities. Of course, it can always get better, but there aren't many that are doing the kind of job of integration that's being done here.
Okay. I have one more question before I unleash the rest of the commission on you. And Mr. Evans, it's your comments. Treaty 8 was signed in 1899 on the southern shore of Lesser Slave Lake, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Chief Kinisayu and Chief Mustus were what they called headmen at the time, who led all of the communities on the southern shore of Lesser Slave Lake. And the actual place of signing, as far as we know, was on what is now part of the Sucker Creek Reserve.
Okay. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm a bit of a historic nerd, and I know very well where Treaty 7 was signed. I believe it was 1873, that's an important data point for me for report writing purposes. So, Mr. Evans, can you send me something, if it's not already in a report, about the historic nature of this area?
I'm not sure that Jennifer provided anything to you. I know that we did not, but I would be happy to share that with you.
And your comments about the continuity over the last 36 years is very important. In my previous life, I did know Ms. Callahayson, and she ably represented your area. So yeah, please send the commission some information along those lines.
I'm happy to do so. Mr. Sinclair is also now, who's the MLA, and I realize he's in a position of some difficulty with the government, but he also is an Indigenous representative who was elected up here.
Right, and he's presenting next week, I believe, so we'll hear all facets of that. Okay, thank you. Now, I've occupied enough time here. I'm going to turn it over to the commission. Dr. Martin, any questions, comments?
Yeah, several. It's good to hear your voice, Mike Evans. It's great. My first comment really is that it is the genius of sparsely populated areas and communities that they find ways to link up, to discuss all the issues that preoccupy smaller towns about resource allocation, budgeting, priorities, and services that can be shared and how to do workarounds, all of which is made much more difficult, of course, by the extreme distances and the sparse populations in the north. And we've heard this point repeatedly and I think persuasively in the last couple of days. And I'm very interested to hear more. Perhaps Jennifer, you can speak to this as well. I know Mike is very well versed in it. Is about the whole planning process and the cohesion of all these groups in ANCA. 5 First Nations, 5 municipalities. It's quite a lot to juggle, and you are inferring, and I'm persuaded by your remarks, that all these groups work well together, as the judge said, cohesively, to build out a planning portrait and prioritizing the needs of these communities. So this is quite impressive, I must say, and I just invite you to add some further anecdotes, if you will, about shared planning and shared services.
It's a process. It takes time, but I think lots of it is because when you look at even the reports that you're suggesting, not only are you diluting our voices a bit as ANSA and as a region, but you're taking smaller communities and matching them with larger communities, and so that rural Indigenous voice gets diluted by some of those bigger communities in other areas. We have some needs, and we have the same needs, and we are all connected, and we're all related and tied together. As are there times where Slave Lake and High Prairie have to be told to settle down a little bit? It's not always about you. As you can see, sometimes that's the case, right? But at the end of the day, we have lots of the same issues. We're not going to agree on everything, but how do we communicate with each other? How do we share a healthy region and a healthy lakeshore, or healthy communities? And so how do we tie some of those pieces in together to move the region forward? And so is it a perfect system? No. Is it a slow system? But we're working at it. And so if this was to go forward, I know what the future of a group like something what us would look like. I'm not sure, to be completely and totally honest. Mayor Ward said it best, though, that we would figure it out, because in the North, we always do figure it out. And I agree with that, right? But we're really starting to get some momentum and to bring some eyes on our region at some of the gaps that really exist. I'm sure if we had some support in terms of infrastructure and some investment in our region, that we probably could grow like the rest of Alberta has been, and that at the next time that this commission happens, we could be having a very different conversation. But we need some support, and we need some growth, and we need some investing in resources and our infrastructure to do so. And by splitting us isn't doing that.
I wanted to suggest something else as well. This map is actually really instructive because in a way it reflects the regionality that we've been talking about. There was an earlier conversation, and there's some sort of dispute about the geographic center of Alberta. Ken Matthews is correct. It's just south of Slave Lake. It's not that close to Barhead. Regardless, if you look at this map, this reflects the regionality in the transportation coordinator. Transportation corridor. If you were to connect all those dots, that's Highway 2 on the south shore of Lesser Slave Lake. And that's part of the reason that these communities are linked the way they are. Then with the upgrades that have been done to 88 in the past 30 years, that's what connects the MD of Opportunity. That connects Big Stone, Red Earth. Now I'm forgetting the name of the other, a number of those communities up there. And it's been a while. I drove the highway from off number 2 through Swan Hills down to Barhead for the first time in 30 years a couple of weeks ago. And, that's another spur, but it comes off of Highway 2. It's no different than building a new road in the city and all of a sudden you've got new subdivisions. These communities work together the way that they do because they're linked by infrastructure. And what you're doing is splitting an existing, there's the potential here to divide an already highly functioning regional area that also has historical significance.
Thank you. One last comment to Jennifer's earlier remark about underreporting of population. We agree, but all census makers and would agree that it's extremely difficult to do accurate population counts in First Nations because they're not necessarily self-reporting. So they have some probabilistic estimates. And so I suspect you're absolutely right empirically. And yet we have to work with the data sets that the Office of Statistics and Information and Treasury Board have worked out that has the highest probability of being accurate at the time for the date they are published. So it's a fair critique, and we can't actually repair those data sets. But your point is well taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin.
If there's, I don't mean to be presumptuous here, but if there is a willingness, and as I said, in some level, these boundaries are all arbitrary as it is. If you're concerned that the population of this constituency is too small, how difficult would it be to add some areas from neighboring to change the population without necessarily affecting? I'm just putting that on the table, I guess. If the population is the driver, but this particular region is unique for other reasons, maybe that can be addressed a different way than dividing it.
And Jennifer, I think, raised the point of 15.2. So we could, we've not used those tools in our toolbox sufficiently either. So that's certainly on our mind. Thank you.
And some of it, my last comment is some of it about the population counts is, but there's a history about why sometimes in Indigenous communities, they don't want to necessarily be counted on some of those pieces, but by diluting some of those voices and not necessarily, like Mike had mentioned, that we have in the history had Indigenous population represented we have a high level of it. So there's quite a few people who represent our MLA, right, through Indigenous pieces. By moving it so that doesn't happen as often, doesn't necessarily make them feel more welcome to be counted.
And sorry to
that makes sense.
Yeah, sorry to correct you, Jennifer. It's not your last comment because the commission isn't finished yet. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sampson for any questions.
I just wanted to make a comment because I note that there was concern raised by the group that there was not sufficient or appropriate notice given for the work that we are undertaking. If it gives you any peace of mind, we have received an enormous amount of submissions based on the work we've done to date, 1,100. And my colleague tells me that over 100 of them were based on a discontentment with the work we did on the north. So rest assured, we heard you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Evans?
Yeah, Mike Evans, my brother's named Mike Evans, and I have a second cousin, Mike Evans, and so we can account for 143
of us.
Yeah.
Who knew it was such a popular name?
When I was with the Department of English at the U of A, there were 3 of us on faculty with the same name.
That would have been confusing. Can you? There was a reference to the band that it was a united band, or more or less united, signed Treaty 8, and then I want to know. But then it looks like it fractured into a number of separate bands. Can you tell me how that works?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the 19th century, when the treaty was executed, there was no such thing as bands. That's a colonial settler notion. The farther north that you go, perhaps not in 1899 that would have been true. It's still true. Might not have been true in 1200. But the farther north you go, the more traditionally people live. And the nature of the ecosystem requires a different kind of community than you might have been able to maintain in the south, where buffalo was your principal hunting animal, where you could acquire a large amount of meat by driving animals over a buffalo jump. So people tended to live in sort of extended family groupings in the bush, a semi-nomadic life, but they all knew one another. They would gather at important places a couple of times a year. The southern shores of Lesser Slave Lake were one of those places. Folks farther south talk about Edmonton as having been a gathering place for large numbers of Indigenous people of varying backgrounds. When the treaty was signed, it was signed by folks who were nominated sort of as the leaders of a loosely associated group of woodland Cree people. They were well known to one another, which is why Kinasayu and Moostus were sort of the lead representatives, if you will. And then when it got time to be making reserves, and I'll have to look that up myself. I'm afraid I can't tell you when the reserves started to be designated, but it would have been quite a long time after the signing of Treaty 8. And eventually, as people were encouraged to adopt an agricultural lifestyle, then of course, the population tended to concentrate in specific areas. And so the reserves sprang up around those communities. And over time, in part due to Indian Act requirements of, having a chief and council, that you need to elect them every 2 years, which meant they didn't make very much progress. But there were things by the mainstream community that were imposed on these communities that wound up creating what are now, with Lesser Slave Lake, 4 distinct First Nations that are all allied through the regional council to do work together, but they also provide services to their membership, specifically to their membership, independent of one another as well. So does that answer the question?
It does, yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your submissions.
Okay, well, this has been a very full afternoon, and we're not nearly finished all our presenters, but this has been very enriching for us in over a half hour. So Jennifer and Mike, thank you so much for your presentation, and I trust we'll have your PowerPoint and anything further you can provide from the historic perspective, Mike, that would be helpful.
Some of that is in ANSA's submission, but I can get you some more.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm happy to provide information as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and you're free to stay to hear the rest of the presentations. There's 2 more presentations. First of all, Nathan Stanky. Nathan, are you present and able to present?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Excellent. Fantastic. Yeah, so my name is Nathan Stanky. I am here as a both as a constituent of the North, and also I work in a constituency office in the North for MLA Todd Lowen here in Valley View. So I have a bit of an insight into the kind of the inner workings of representation in this part of the world and its difficulties. So I'll start by saying that, I suppose I'm a little bit disappointed that we have to be having this by Zoom rather than in person. I note that there's in-person events in Edmonton and Calgary, and I kind of start my presentation with this not as a shot at any of the members of this committee or an attack on them, but just as an introduction point to highlight just how difficult it is to represent the North, as I'm sure the Commission has learned. And I appreciate that the Commission had some events in person prior, as it did the first draft prior to Christmas in 2025. But I'm sure, as you discovered, it's very difficult to represent this area, traveling place to place and trying to find hubs locally, enough locations that you feel can geographically cover the people that live here. I'm sure you probably also found that it's difficult to find venues and get the word out properly because we have a very fractured media landscape up here. It's the death of the local paper is kind of unfortunate development, but it's difficult to get the word out on events. You do your best to have events wherever you can across the area, and then you discover that you have halls that aren't very full, or people that didn't ever get the word for whatever reason. And so my point is only to say that there are some difficulties in this. It's not an easy job. The larger we get geographically, the more difficult it gets exponentially, I believe. And so I'm concerned, and I'm glad to hear that the Commission has heard this from other people as well and has acknowledged it, that this report seems to have, I believe, I guess what I'd call an urban bias, which is that it attempts to equalize population without considering the difficulty factor that adds. And so there's a kind of a strange logic here in the report where, and the logic works against itself, unfortunately, where the more you try to equalize population, the more difficult you make it. So you're actually getting further away from equal representation the closer you get to equal population. So what I mean is essentially that in an urban riding, I can appreciate that if you had 20 seats to distribute within Calgary and about 1 million people, say, you could do that calculation pretty easily, and you would do your best to keep those populations as close as possible. And if you ever had any dramatic changes within a city, it would be fairly easy just to move that line a couple city blocks over and restore some more equilibrium. However, in the north, trying to meet that population target often results in moving the line hundreds of kilometers. And at that point, you are introducing not just distance, but in many cases, multiple municipalities. If you move a line 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, you're probably into another municipal district or county. You've probably incorporated more villages and towns, and even school boards. And so you're adding a number of different elected officials now that the MLA has to represent and meet with regularly. So I believe that we kind of got a bit of a double whammy here in rural Alberta, in that the report added 2 seats. I mean, the legislation adds 2 seats, taking us from 87 to 89, both of which are added in urban Alberta. And then we lose 2 seats. So the net swing is actually a 4-seat swing to urban Alberta. And not that those people don't deserve representation, but again, we talk about fair representation. I believe that the Act, in Section 15.2 of the Act, I'm just pulling up here, make sure I'm referencing the right thing. It does allow us to create boundaries that are up to 50% lower than the average. And I don't believe that's a bad thing. I believe that to try and minimize those, to try and say to have only none or only one, I believe there's only one in this report that is within that 50% margin. It's not quite, it's missing the mark in that it seems almost to think that these exceptions exist, and the misconception is that we should try to minimize these exceptions. When honestly, my preference would be, if you're allotted 4 that are allowed to be 50% below the average, use those 4, because I honestly think you have to use those 4. Population being equal, it's much harder to represent a rural riding. I would say, so my math would be that if it's 50% below the population average, it's twice as hard to represent. And so that difficulty multiplier basically brings you up to equilibrium anyway. A rural riding the size of ours with 30,000 people is twice as hard to represent as an urban riding with 60. I would make that case for sure. And so what this report does is it unfortunately shoots at population equalization. And so the kind of the strange result of that, again, the strange logic of this is that you end up having urban seats with 49, 50, 51,000 people, and you have rural seats with 46, 47, 48,000 people. And I question the equity in doing that and the fairness in doing that. It, again, population trying to be equalized, there is no comparison between the difficulty in getting adequate representation here versus in a city. So I'll leave you with that. And I've been appreciating watching the submissions, and I appreciate the work of the committee. So thank you for allowing me to present.
Thank you, Mr. Stanky. Let's get into some dialogue. Mr. Evans, any questions or comments of this presenter?
I think if I understand the summary of your submissions, it's use the 15.2 as a tool to provide effective representation in the North. Don't be afraid to use it.
Absolutely. I say that, again, my preference would be to use all 4 if possible. I mean, I don't think that there is a how should I put this? A moral argument for using fewer rather than more. I think that just because it's an exception doesn't mean that we shouldn't that we should shy away from using it. It's an exception that's put in there for a very good reason. And in fact, it's the only way, again, the strange logic of the larger you try to make your riding to equalize the population, the harder you're making it to represent it. It's a paradox, right? And so the only way to square that circle is to allow these exceptions. There's frankly no other way. I do appreciate that the 2 extra seats that are being added did go to urban Alberta. I mean, we probably don't have a way around that in terms of it. They certainly probably do deserve more seats in those areas, but that kind of seems to take care of that urban growth factor. And I think that on the rural side, leaving those seats in place as much as possible would be far preferable.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate that.
Sampson?
Thank you again for your time today. Good descriptions and analogies for the North and the problems you're facing. I agree with my colleague. We have to have a hard look at 15.2 again, particularly in relation to your area. So I can tell you we will do that. We will have a look at it. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Martin, any questions?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I think you're spot on about some of the difficulties and indeed the paradoxes as you refer to them. You know, I will say in our own defense is that when we first began, we knew this would be a long game, and that's why we had an interim report, and it was even titled that, because we knew, and we have been rewarded with a deluge of submissions, many of which were very useful and very detailed. And so the accumulated effect of which is to bring much more granular information to our attention than we had when we began. I agree that it's always been our intention to fully respect the features of the Act, which is quite a juggling act to do, and the population side of it is probably the easiest of all the factors that we are enjoined to pay respect to, and so that's why we're having this second round, as it were. So your remarks are heard, and I'm thanking you for presenting them.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stanky. And maybe it was the time of the year, but we didn't have an overabundance of presenters when we were in the North in June. But we've certainly got the North's attention by way of our interim report. So thank you,
Yeah.
and you've given us some punchy lines here, and the paradox. Your description of the paradox is bang on, and we might just steal that and incorporate that in our report. So. Thank you so much, Mr. Stanky. Please, by the way, were you here throughout the day listening to other submissions?
I was watching on the YouTube link.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Well, thank you. We have one more presenter scheduled today, Amanda McDonald.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, I have a feeling I'll probably maybe just be the summary that you need, because I probably am going to say a lot of the similar things that you guys have heard today. But I'm the Reeve for the County of Grand Prairie, and we just wanted to recognize the Commission's mandate and that you've been tasked with balancing population parity with effective representation. And in Alberta, and especially Northern Alberta, some of those concepts are not necessarily the same thing. So numbers alone do not necessarily tell the full story of how residents access their MLAs, or what it takes for an MLA to meaningfully serve a very large rural riding. So the Electoral Boundaries Commission Act, it requires consideration of more than just population, and you guys referenced that already, but some of those highlight sparsity, geography, transportation realities, communities of interest, and clarity of boundaries, which again was brought up on two previous to me. And these factors are especially important in the North, especially when distances are very long and travel conditions are difficult and communities are very widely spaced apart. So even though a boundary map may look balanced on paper, in practice it could reduce representation if the ridings became too large for one MLA to serve it effectively. So when residents can't access their MLA, or when an MLA cannot reasonably cover the vast territory, representation becomes unequal regardless of the population. So this is why the County of Grand Prairie is concerned about the interim recommendation that reduces Northern Alberta from 7 to 6. This is not simply a reshuffling of lines. It does represent a structural loss of representation in the North. And so a single MLA serving a riding that is large would face enormous geographic and logistic challenges. It stretches from remote communities to agricultural regions, and from Indigenous communities to regional service hubs. And so this reduction not just affects accessibility, but the responsiveness and engagement that residents expect from an elected official. So in many cases, this would mean timely face-to-face interactions become nearly impossible. And I think even that was brought up today in response to the Zoom versus in-person meetings. So at the same time, we also want to acknowledge that some things are working really well. So, I mean, in the Grand Prairie area, the existing Grand Prairie and Grand Prairie Wapiti ridings reflect a natural community alignment, and they fit how people live and work in this area. And it does allow the MLAs to remain present and engaged. And so the county supports keeping those boundaries intact. They are functioning, effective, and require minimal disruption. So thank you for that. We also want to highlight the realities of geography and workload in the rural northern ridings. So a rural MLA covers thousands of square kilometers, often traveling long distances in challenging weather and roads. And they engage with multiple municipalities, school boards, agricultural service boards, First Nations, industry groups, and regional organizations. And sometimes that workload isn't necessarily comparable to some urban ridings. And again, that doesn't reflect in population numbers all the time. So growth in Northern Alberta further supports the need to retain full representation. So, for example, the County of Grand Prairie has grown by nearly 12% in the last 3 years. And the Grand Prairie Wapiti riding aligns closely with those provincial averages, and the City of Grand Prairie continues to grow as well. So meanwhile, even though there are some smaller populations in other regions, these do still cover a vast area. And so historically, the Commission has retained rural northern ridings like this because of the unique geographic and representational demands. And so eliminating one now would sort of ignore those long-standing principles and create a larger rural riding that's more difficult for one person to serve. So I also just want to highlight quickly that the Northern Alberta plays such a central role in the economy. And so resource development, agricultural and transportation corridors, and infrastructure located in the north contribute directly to the province's overall prosperity. And so when we're looking at reducing representation, decision-making at the provincial level risks become disconnected from realities and opportunities in the north. And so strong representation will ensure that issues like access to healthcare, transportation, infrastructure, policing, and education are understood with that northern context if we're losing those people. So just to summarize, I think we want to just continue to support the retaining 7 electoral divisions in the northwestern Alberta is important to people up in the north. That structure ensures that residents across a vast region continue to have meaningful access to their elected representatives. And we want to continue to support current boundaries in the Grand Prairie and the Grand Prairie Wapiti region as they are working well and they align really well with the community realities that we face on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I think I haven't really given you anything new that you haven't heard already today, but we just want to make sure that you're kind of looking at the bigger picture and not just a desktop. And really, I hope you take the words that you've heard today and take that into strong consideration when you go to your final report.
Thank you very much, Ms. McDonald. Dr. Martin, any questions or comments?
Well, again, thank you, Reeve. I think it is important, even though you have reiterated many of the points that we have heard today, to be sure, as you alluded to. I must also say you should take pride in the fact that of the 1,100 odd submissions we received in November and December, there were well over 100, maybe 125 from residents in the north talking about the northern voice, if I may encapsulate it that way, as an important influencer in provincial politics. And so the notion that we would rely exclusively on population is misplaced, and the letters help us understand at a granular level a lot of the particular issues and linkages that exist between communities large and small in the north. And I'm particularly interested in your remark that the county has grown 12% in its population in the last 3 years. And are there particular industries that drive that?
So in the county, we actually have quite a few. I mean, we have mills, we have forestry, oil and gas, agriculture, and tourism. So we're actually we're pretty special in that regard. We don't kind of focus on one thing. I guess mining would be one of the ones we might have be missing, but so all of that is driving population growth for sure. Oil and gas is probably our strongest growth right now, but they're all still very viable.
Thank you.
Ms. Sampson?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank you for your presentation, taking time out today for us. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah. Thank you for your presentation, Reid McDonald. I do have a question about, earlier today we heard from the mayor of Grand Prairie, and she made reference to she's happy with the proposed electoral districts in the interim report, but her preferred, if she had her preference, would be to split Grand Prairie so that you had two hybrid ridings. Is that something that you would be interested in?
I mean, I think as of right now, like I did say, we are happy with how it has been divided so far. I don't really want to just posturize on what I think. I would want to sort of look at what you were asking for. If it's just a split down the middle, I'm not too sure what that achieves differently than what you already do have. Both MLAs do have a portion of urban and a portion of rural. So I'm not sure, other than maybe just if there was a line that made more sense, then I'd be interested in looking at that. But like I said, both specifically in our area, they share an office, they work together on a daily basis. So again, switching that line at this point, I'm not sure would change a huge amount for us in the county. So I can't really speak to necessarily what the city sees in that regard. But I mean, I would be interested to see what your thoughts were. But again, like I said, they both have a portion urban, they both have a portion rural. So I don't know what we would gain.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Ms. McDonald, I want to take this opportunity to just illustrate to you the challenge we have as a commission. And let me just reference an MLA who presented to us in Calgary earlier this week. And he asserted that his electoral division was becoming unreasonably large. And by that, he meant population. It was over 60,000 people. So I then put to him, well, let's talk about unreasonably large. Now, it's been quoted to me. I'm not sure. I haven't verified it, or staff, I'm not sure have verified it, but our proposed riding, the southern boundary is closer to the state of Montana than it is to the boundary of Northwest Territories. And so I put that to him. That's the extremes we're dealing with. What's unreasonably large? And if I can maybe just give you a little recap of what happened, we didn't hear a lot of submissions from the north on our first time round. Having sat up there and been up there, I know why. Everybody was working hard, farming and fishing and doing everything else you do up there. But we've certainly got your attention in the north since our report. And as Dr. Martin has said, we've heard from the north. We're hearing from the north. And that's the value of an interim report and moving to a final report. So thank you and so many of your colleagues from the north for your presentations and for so generously sharing your time and telling us where we need to go in the final report. So thank you so much.
You bet.
Okay, that I believe.
If I may, sorry, it's Carolyn Colbaba. In response to the MLA that spoke about 60,000 people in the urban Calgary, I would suggest to him that if he rented a large hall and notified his 60,000 people, he would probably get them there, and it wouldn't take any one of them very long to get there. If our MLA was to say we're having an open house in the north and everybody come, there would be probably 60% of us that would have to stay overnight in a hotel in order to get there. So that is the difference. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, I think that's, unless I've missed someone, I'll just call it open for any people that are in the virtual room who had intended to present and we missed. Please come forth now and identify yourself. Otherwise, we will adjourn the proceedings. We're going to be back here at what, 5:30? So we're going to grab a bite to eat, and we'll be back here at 5:30 for this evening's sessions. Thank you.